Abusive men describe the benefits of violence. All these when you do X. I feel blah blah statements and communicate more doesn't work on men who benefit from abusing you. There are just so many reasons to keep abusing you. They've already proven they don't care about your feelings. They don't want to inspire admiration, respect, loyalty or love from a woman. They want fear, anxiety, obligation, guilt, obedience and silence. The abuse that day isn't a whim, a mistake, or a reaction to something you did. It's an intentional, deliberate, ongoing pattern with a goal. Notice when they're asked what it would take to make them stop. None of them answered that they finally got it. They regret emotionally harming their partners. They understand now. They're grateful to have it explained to them properly and they'll stop out of remorse. It's not a matter of not getting it or the right words to unlock his understanding. They're all well aware that only real and harsh consequences will make them stop. And even then, they'll go right back to it as soon as they get home. Nothing stops the abuse except leaving. My ex used to admit. He'd annoy me just to watch me snap. Then when I snapped, he could take the high road. When you get a peek at the stark realities of this mindset, you realize there is nothing to be gained in accepting a partner that is even a little controlling or intimidating. You will never have sex good enough, a partner attractive enough, or a bank account fat enough to make it worth it. And yes, that works both ways. And this should be talked about in that 5th grade health class. Red heart to anyone going through this. I'm nearly fully out and Jesus. It's not easy. She feels less worthy so defers to my needs and wants. Wow. Yep. This is why it can be dangerous for a survivor of IPV to go to traditional marriage relationship counseling with her abuser. The abuser needs individual or group batterer's intervention. That was a chilling read. I'll never forget one argument. Him tell me why you're walking on eggshells all the time around me. Me, I don't know. Maybe it's because Him cutting me off, well, this isn't about you. I was talking about me. Mine said, sir, I can break you. Not surprising. But still horrific to read one cruel reason after another. Every girl in high school should read this list. It is so easy to manipulate young women who are kind and nurturing and vulnerable to a guy that professes to love them. And has a story that makes young women feel sorry for him. And then they get trapped. And have kids. And don't have the means or the will or are too afraid to leave. Dictate reality. Yikes. I think that's the scariest one. They think they get some of these things, but in fact they lose respect. I have been screaming this from the rooftops for years. Abusers are not misunderstood victims, they're not unaware of what they're doing or why. The belief in a cycle of violence was clinically popular but empirically unsupported. Emerging from accounts by psychotherapists and social workers whose perspective was understandably one-sided. There's no empirical evidence that gives credence for the cycle of abuse used to defend many an abusive POS. The length of that list is really quite frightening. I guess as someone who was bullied constantly as a kid, I likely knew this was the case. If it wasn't accomplishing something for them, the bullies would have stopped. It's still chilling to have it stated so clearly and matter-of-factly. Holy shit. I kept hoping the list would end. I will never fucking get married. A ton of men just pretend to be progressive and emotionally intelligent too and then turn around and become a monster. At this point I don't even want to freaking date them. There was a large, retrospective, multiple-city study on the effects of domestic violence prevention programs. There was no drop in the number of women killed, but there was a drop in the number of men killed in domestic violence situations. The theory went that DV programs focus on getting the woman to acknowledge the situation and leave, which is when it's most dangerous to leave. But since there are more ways some women do leave and don't get to a point that they have no choice left but to kill the abuser. That never-ending list of benefits to battering is terrifying. This is why I recommend every woman read Why Does He Do That? By Lundy Bancroft. They know what they're doing. And they're doing it on purpose. This article illustrates why I have a hard time trusting men. Even the men who profess to be supportive of women and women's equality. All men benefit from the subjugation of women. Even the progressive ones. That list is both horrific and unsurprising. This reminds me of a conversation that I had with my abusive ex in which he said, "You allow your father to speak to you like that? Sir, I don't see what the issue is." I was fucking floored. My dad has abused me throughout my entire life. Saving this post. Ugh. Future self, don't hear him out. Don't give him another chance. Give yourself peace. As a society, we have never really taken violence prevention seriously. When children are showing signs of abuse and trauma, we offer punishments and consequences instead of intervention and support. These men were children once, and their behavior was reinforced at home and by society. And instead of learning love and support and community and relationships, they strategized on how to avoid consequences. Our society made these men. Thankfully now there is more awareness about trauma, emotional and physical, inflicted by these continued abuses. Mental health experts are getting wise to the fact that women partners who are not necessarily physically beaten but are subjected day in day out to controlling and intimidating behaviors suffer physical effects akin to PTSD. I am so happy that maybe therapists will move away from the whole "he has a problem, we have to support him by staying and tolerating his abuse" mentality. Escaping, not leaving. We ask why didn't she just leave? But we should ask how can we support her to escape? Single quote. Most of these men are perfectly able to control their anger while at work, in front of friends, so they know what they are doing. It's targeted. Nothing stops the abuse except leaving is the absolute truth. Anyone else felt anxious as the list kept going on longer and longer. I think a lot of people don't understand this, but I don't blame them at all. They think a nice person is in there if they could just find the key. But it's not your job. You don't have to take that. You don't set yourself on fire to try to melt a permafrost heart. So what the article is saying is that the current responses to violence by trying to get him to see the harm they are causing to their victims is actually reinforcing their behavior. Oof, that's terrifying. My mind couldn't really comprehend what I just read. I really hate abusive people. Yep. In the end my abusive ex said to me I've had to control myself really well because you were super easy to manipulate. Yikes. It always felt like walking on eggshells around him. I constantly tried those when you do X. I feel why statements, but they just don't work on abusers. Men are 100 the emotional sex and have violent temper tantrums to prove it.